Now, I realize that many listeners may be thinking, wives do what? Why does Paul tell wives to submit to their husbands? And why do husbands apparently get off so easy with the simple command to love their wives? Is Paul some kind of apostolic chauvinist? What in the world does he mean when he says such things? I promise to get to that later on in the book. Before we can, however, we first need to focus our attention on what lies behind these controversial words. Paul's description of Christ as a bridegroom, the church as his bride, and the crucifixion of Jesus as the kind of ancient Jewish wedding day on which he loved her and gave himself for her. Indeed, as we will hear later on, when Paul refers to the church being washed and presented to Christ, he is describing the ancient Jewish bridal bath and wedding ceremony. From Paul's point of view, the torture and crucifixion of Jesus on Calvary was nothing less than an expression of spousal love. What are we to make of this mysterious analogy? To be sure, most Christians are familiar with the idea that Christ is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. But what does this really mean? And what would ever possess Paul to think of such a comparison? If you had been there at the foot of the bloody cross, with Jesus hanging there dying, is that how you would have described what was happening? How could a first-century Jew like Paul, who knew how horribly brutal Roman crucifixions were, have ever compared the execution of Jesus to the marriage between a bridegroom and his bride? Is this just an elegant metaphor? If so, why then does Paul refer to it as a great mystery? Greek, mysterion mega. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 32. As I hope to show in this book, it is precisely because Paul was Jewish that he saw the passion of Christ in this way. It is precisely because Paul knew Jewish scripture and tradition that he was able to see the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth as more than just a Roman execution, an unjust martyrdom, or even the sacrifice of the Son of God. Because of his Jewish background, Paul saw the passion and death of Christ as the fulfillment of the God of Israel's eternal plan to wed himself to humankind in an everlasting marital covenant. As we will hear in this book, from an ancient Jewish perspective in its deepest mystery, all of salvation history is in fact a divine love story between Creator and creature, between God and Israel, a story that comes to its climax on the bloody wood of a Roman cross. In order for us to see all of this, however, we will have to go back in time to the 1st century A.D. and take off our modern eyeglasses and try to see both the love of God and the passion of Jesus the way the Apostle Paul and other ancient Christians saw them, through ancient Jewish eyes.